All right, everybody, welcome back. And this is the B2B Growth Lab. I am here with, let's call it collaborators today. We might have a little conniving in the background, but today we're here to talk about sink or swim and how it doesn't scale. This is a juicy one, especially in the human-to-human stuff, because really, this is all about the mentorship gap in growing teams. I've got 9 personal stories about this just with blueprints and explorations we've been doing inside of client companies. I guess our subtopics today are onboarding, mentorship systems, and retention. And I'm going to throw it out there to start. That includes clients and team. So, how do you guys feel about that? How many businesses have you looked at, worked in, advised for, where they're working on hope and where they have people who come in and they're just like going to magically figure things out, right? Instead of being led through the steps.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, let's make it worse before we solve it, right? Like, let's really tear the Band-Aid off and rub some salt in that wound, right? Yeah. So my latest LinkedIn post was the brain drain is here, right? The brain drain is here. Almost all the boomers have left or are about to leave, especially when you get into tradecraft, field service, right? Tool room, right? Machine shop, like the tops of all those different trades, especially hard skills, things that require trade craft, right? They're all like, business leaders are looking around, they're like, oh, crap. The average age in this department is 68 years old. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the solutions to that is exactly what we're talking about today, right? I call it apprenticeship. Hire a little early, get a year, 18 months worth of overlap, put that mentoring relationship in place, an understudy, if you will, solve some of your brain drain, right? Document, SOPs, but SOPs won't cover the whole dang thing because tradecraft is called tradecraft for a reason.
Right.
Right? You need time on torch, right? Yeah. It happens.
You know, it's funny because they call it tradecraft in the spy world as well.
Right.
And if you look at what it takes to become a spy, the ins and outs, it's like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of things that you can't put into an SOP.
Right.
And it's the same way in our organizations. I remember I got started into an organization. I think that was the CEO's goal. It was a smaller organization. So I interviewed directly with the CEO. And I think that was his goal. But the guy that he put me under very clearly did not want to have that relationship. And I think that that's part of this equation, right? It's not just hiring at the right time. It's making sure that the people that you bring into the organization are able to be mentored, because I'll admit I was kind of an unruly guy. I'm sure you guys aren't surprised by that at all. And the guy that they asked to mentor me didn't want the job. He didn't want to have to mentor me. And so it was like, I think that a lot of organizations miss that key component. Right? They say, oh, you've got to hire for cultural fit. Okay, what does that really mean? You've got to hire for skill set. Okay, what does that really mean? You know, there's all of these different things. And if you are bringing in a mentor, bringing in someone to be mentored, I guess, a mentee, as it were, does the mentor actually want to mentor them? Because if they don't, then you're in the same place.
There's something really important here. And like, I guess I'm going to take on the role of tangent guy today, but the experiential learning thing, like the second time I went to Japan, I was a black belt. And I was starting to understand how little I knew at that point.
Right.
I can't say I understood it the first time I went, but I still have this memory of being back in the dojo in North America and doing this one thing one day in like while practicing Aikido. And I could remember the moment 3 months back when I was in Japan, when this guy was showing me it. And that was one of the clearest examples for me of the gap. Like it took me 3 months to figure out what he was saying.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't take 3 months off of class. It just took me 3 months to actually get to the level of comprehension that he was trying to share with me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how big those knowledge gaps are.
Well, I think it's like I had a mentor who always used to say learning is spaced repetition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of what you're bringing up is it's like 18 months may even be too short a time frame for some of the learning that you have to go through with things like this. And just because you won't encounter all of the things that your mentor has encountered in 18 months, what they have encountered over their 30-year career. And
Yes.
it's like, I think that 18-month time frame is really to build a relationship such that when that mentor retires, you still have a relationship where you can reach out to them and say, hey, I have a question. What do I do here? How do I fix this? Did you ever come across anything like this? Because I think that's where the thing becomes powerful and way more valid.
It sounds funny to say this, but this is one of the things that the military does exceptionally well. So you're right, Zach. 18 months, maybe it's not about the time. Maybe it's about a skills and qualification log that has a specific set of tasks in there that you have to experience a variable number of times to develop the expertise to be considered qualified. Right? That's how we did it. That's how you know if you're certified to be an inspector on your airframe, like I did in the military, right? Unless you changed a main rotor head, you are not qualified to wear a white hat and be a quality assurance rep. So I walked around for 3 months looking for a rotor head to change. It was the only gap in my book. Right? Then one night in Yuma, Arizona, I saw him wheeling the aircraft under the overhead crane. I said, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're going to change a rotor head. I said, all right, looks like I'm working a double tonight. Pass me a torque wrench. Let's go. Right? And at that point, I filled out the rest of my book and I became a quality assurance rep. I was done. White hat, youngest in the squadron.
Oh.
So we need structure. It's not an SOP. What we call the qual log, right? So give your apprentice, give your mentor, right? Whatever you're doing, onboarding, whatever replacement, backfill, when you're putting it together, some structure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I really like this. I really like this because what it's making me think of, because I'm weird, is it's making me think of how people used to go from nobody to becoming a knight. Right? You started off as a page and your job was to, I get to carry the knight's sword. That's my job. And it's really important because if I don't carry the knight's sword, then he goes into battle without a sword and he dies. Then it's, now I get to carry his shield. I get to ride beside him. I get to give, talk through what's going on. And then I become a knight. And there's like, I'm looking for all of the experiences that he has so that I can begin to train my mind to think in the same way he has, not to be indoctrinated, but to achieve that level of critical thinking based off of his experiences. And I think that may be what we're missing here, right? To what you're talking about is it's like, if an old knight doesn't want to train a page, the page is never going to become a squire, is never going to become a knight, right? And think about it this way. You would never hire someone to be in your customer onboarding department who didn't want to onboard customers.
Yes.
And I think that this is something that we miss because our customers, so I've been saying this for a while. Our employees are just customers by another name.
Yep.
We are selling them our money and they are buying it with their skills, their time, their attention, their experience, right?
Yeah.
And if we have this customer mindset as we approach this thing and we say, hey, what is it that you need to feel satisfied with the job that we're doing to help you solve your problems? I think that mentorship would go at the top of the list. And I think that you would never hire someone to be a mentor who wouldn't actually want to mentor. And I think, to Rob, to your point, and I'd love to hear your take on it, but I think that onboarding would go smoother.
Yes.
Employee retention would go through the roof. Employee performance would go through the roof. Our profit per employee would go through the roof. And culture would be head and shoulders above where it is now, because you'd actually have the right person indoctrinating someone into your culture.
And maybe, just maybe, 4 years after the fact, you would get a text message that said, "You were the best boss I ever had. No one believed in me and helped me and taught me and helped me grow as much as you had. Would you please be my reference while I look for the next job to get out of this toxic culture?" Right?
Hmm.
That's what you get. You get loyalty, you get followership, right? They grow. The company gets to keep that margin versus what they're paying versus their productivity, right? Loyalty, cost of turnover, the 231% number, right? We save that money. It shows up on the bottom line. Yeah, some of it's soft and some of it's hard, but it's proven out, right? It pays. There is an ROI to hiring the right people who are willing to be mentors, putting the programs in place, properly resourced, right? Programmatically supported. It's a little bit of voodoo, right? It's a little bit of art in the matchmaking, right? A little bit of work to manage it, but boy, does it pay.
So I know, I mean, putting my foot in my mouth with this, but this is so obvious for team, right? And clearly it's not, because you go out and solve these problems. But let's assume it is obvious internally. How do we make it obvious externally? How do customers get mentored? Right? Because any business, in my opinion, like your business, my business, our job is to have an impact, right? And like that's what we do for our customers. We want to take them and give them a result, potentially like unimaginable result to where they think their pain is, their problem is, the thing that they're struggling with. And so that means we have to mentor the customer as well. How do you see that working?
Boy, it's interesting because rarely with a customer do you get what I would call the long-term sustainable relationship that typically characterizes mentorship, right? It's typically longer run. Think big brothers, big sisters, right? Like it's time. Rarely with a customer do you get that kind of time. Often it's more in the form of coaching that you could say facilitatively, what's your goal? What have you tried? What are the options? How do you want to go forward? Right? You could do that with a customer. It's called the grow model, but it's also a functional sales facilitation model.
Okay.
That I would use, right? Like, what are you trying to solve, and what have you already tried, and You give options, I give options, and you make the choice, right? You're fully empowered. So when I think of, interacting with customers, I want to meet them where they're at, and I want them to own their destiny and outcome. And, I'll be a partner in it, but no buyer's remorse, right? If you do the mentoring right, if you do the coaching right, we're kind of blending two different things. People feel good at the end of it. Like they grew, like they learned, you solved their problem, right?
Okay. So how do we distinguish between mentorship and coaching?
There's a lot of academic definitions we could compare and contrast here.
Okay.
The time's the big one. The long-term nature of mentoring is typically what differentiates it. Coaching can be applied as kind of a point-based interaction.
Right.
I could say, Jacob, I need you to coach me through something. It's going to be a one and done thing typically.
Okay.
If it starts to become a longitudinal effort over the course of 6 to 12 months, and it's in a structured relationship, maybe where, matchmaking was done by HR or something like that, or a professional organization, well, that's more a mentoring kind of relationship. Usually mentoring is also win-win.
Got it. So that's perfect because, again, I'm still thinking about the customer-facing side, as I tend to do. So I've just transacted. Now I'm being onboarded. And maybe two ways of defining coaching is during the onboarding call. How to get the most out of this your first week. Also, my ability to, especially in the systems we deploy, push a button and be like, I'm struggling here as a client. And then you can have that one and done. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? How can we make sure that happens? But it's got a singularity to it. Versus mentorship, customer facing would be, we're going to meet every week for this period of time to make sure you're ramped up.
Right.
Which translates internally as well, I assume.
Yeah. And when we meet, I'd like some feedback from you, right? Like some data.
Okay.
Love your opinions, and bring your problems too. We'll talk through that. And here's the structured guide, our plan for what we're going to work through in those meetings for that number of weeks. And it's not all inclusive, right? That's fine. That's by design, but it's probably going to be somewhere between 60 and 80% of what we cover, right? And the rest of it is what you bring, right? So yeah, dig it.
Like it. And it seems like something that can be implemented.
Been there, done that. Yes. Let's go. More companies would benefit from implementing these kinds of programs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Retention, growth, success. For the finance people in the room, greater ROI, marginal soft value, right? Like, come on.
So a customer success manager is just an outward facing coach or mentor.
I think if you have that handoff in your org, right? Very often when you buy something, especially like software, right? The salesperson is not your account manager after the sale. There's actually a very intentional handoff.
Right.
And so when you get to that account manager, the posture should change to that of like a coach and mentor, right? They're there to help you get the most out of the software.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the system or the process or whatever it is. Like,
right.
You don't want to stand there and cut their meat for them and tell them how many times to chew it.
Right.
But it doesn't hurt to be like, this pairs really well with that.
Right. Yeah. Facilitate them through learning, right? Give them the chance to succeed. Cheer for them when they do. Nice. Now you know that, right? Validate it.
Right.
Right. All right. Now, what's your next struggle? What's your next question?
And this is maybe the place where people try to replace culture with environment. Because I can't see how, just to poke fun at a couple of cliches, like beanbag chairs and kombucha on tap are going to cut it.
Oh, and you can see that too. You can see that because one of the things that we do is we do culture parity. And you see this in startups all the time and in incubators and co-working spaces, right? All we have to do is get parity and then we'll get people to come and work with us. That's not how it works. And I know plenty of people who actually forego the kombucha on tap and the ping pong tables and the N64 gaming tournaments to have a greater opportunity at upward mobility, to work in a serious business. Like it all depends on your team and what they need. And the kombucha, the ping pong, all of that stuff is just a placeholder for a lazy leader who doesn't want to take the time to understand what his employee customers, instead of his outward customer, his internal customer, what they actually want and need from him.
Right. There's no amount of snacks in the break room that will solve for a toxic culture of poor leaders, bullies, right, harassment, et cetera, et cetera. You cannot ping pong your way out of that. It's not a thing.
And just to talk about or the nothing side of it too, right? Like I was actually in a Blueprint conversation in the last 2 weeks, and a sales lead was brought in. Right? They were attracted with like, make a difference. We're up to something. Here's a little bit more than you're making. Plus, since we're young, I can give you a stake. So they like equity, cash, and meaning were the sales process. But I'm interviewing this person who's brought in to kind of help with the move from founder-led sales and like replace that role. And I just asked that question. I have this history, so I think about it in pain, right? Like, what's your pain? So this guy's response was like, where I was before, I was a 9 out of 10. Like, I was good at my job.
Mm-hmm.
Where I am here is a 4 or a 5. And we started talking about what their onboarding process was like, and he's like, basically, they just said, do what you did at that company.
Right.
And like the tools, the system, the process, like none of that existed. And, I get it because we're being hired to build it. But what happens if you lose that person in the meantime? And it's not the first time I've ever seen it. It's just the most recent and stark example that I can think of.
How to tell the story without throwing my friend under the bus, right? Hire people into a sales role, tell them they got to be on the road, and then burden them with 60 hours of administrative work every week.
And you can't text while you drive anymore.
And then when they scream about, hey, this dog don't hunt, right? Doesn't work. I cannot be on the road 75% of the time, 3 weeks a month, and hunting down logistical problems and doing like low-grade desk work 60 hours a week. I can't, it's 2 jobs.
Yeah.
So where's the back office logistics support? Where's the systems, right? Where's the tracking? Where's the near field and far field RFID tags and relays? And like, right, you could solve this many ways, people and systems, right? Like we can do this. And they're like, oh, you're just not compatible with our culture.
Excuse
the gaslighting, right? That's nice. Thank you.
You just taught me something. I hadn't looked at it this way before, but I was at a consult a month back or so with this company, kind of younger guys who'd taken on this leadership role.
Yeah.
They had like 60 grand in sunk costs in CRM and automations built. It wasn't working the way it was supposed to. Problem number one, right? Buddy brought his techie friend in there who was struggling because it wasn't his environment. Like, it was just a smarter than me hire.
Right.
And what was really interesting, the conversation that we uncovered, is they have 8 sales reps, but they're also, this thing did not have a note taker in this meeting. They're like waiting for 3 people to age out of their role because they won't touch the technology.
Right.
And they're pen and paper sellers. But what you just taught me in this call, Rob, is like, I bet you nobody even talked to them about the sales process when they did the build in the first place. Like, they might have been more interested to even participate had they been consulted about how to turn their pen and paper process into tech.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sounds like it was like built in a bunker somewhere and just dumped on the lap of the company one day.
Well, then there's the aggressive half effort too. Like, hey, we got Salesforce. Hey, we got Salesforce. We bought enterprise software for CRM. Yay, yay. Now, where are the resources? Nobody knows. Are they in the system? Nope. Right? Did we Frankenstein it and concatenate a whole bunch of fields rather than pay for the customization? Yeah, we did that too. Oh, so now we've tribalized Salesforce so that no one can use it. Like, even if you're experienced,
right?
What the hell does that field mean? Why is that blue and that one yellow? It doesn't make any damn sense.
Right.
Well, and again, this to me goes back to the mindset of segregating your customer and your employee in the way that you treat them. Right? If you treated a customer the way that you treated an employee doing Frankenstein Salesforce, like, are you kidding me? You would be dead broke within a month.
Yep.
There's no way that you could operate a successful business and close and maintain customers. Like, there's no way.
Right.
And yet we're shocked when our sales team turns around and says, yeah, peace out.
Right.
What else are they going to do? I mean, really, what else are they going to do? Sales is one of, and I believe will remain one of the most in-demand jobs. Because if you know how to sell, you are incredibly valuable.
Right.
And so they don't have to put up with that garbage. But what about the people in your customer support team? Customer support is not in demand. In fact, it's increasingly getting replaced by AI chatbots and agents. Mm-hmm. So, like, what about them? Are you going to listen to them? Are you going to build something that you want to keep them around? Because someone's got to train the agent,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, you cannot remove the human from the system. But when you stop thinking about them as a human being, as a customer, someone with goals and aspirations who sees your company as a means to an end,
mm-hmm.
then your turnover is going to be atrocious. Your employee turnover is going to be terrible. And I've worked in companies where that was the case. And, it was, quite frankly, it was like two different, it was like the plebeians and the patricians, right? Yes. And you could sense the difference. And it was like, no matter what you said to management, they could not fathom the difference, because one team was like, oh, we need these guys to actually generate money. And the other team was like, oh, well, they're just admin. They're a dime a dozen. I'll go out and replace them like crazy. Right. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you hear what you're saying? Like, you claim to be a Christian and you treat people like this, not to get religion into it, but it's like, You have a certain ethical and moral worldview, but your behavior isn't aligning with it. And if you were to treat a customer that way, churn and burn them like that, you'd be done. You'd be done.
I had a real-time conversation with a gentleman yesterday who, works as an advisor, outside advisor for growth. And like word for word, that was the story he told of like, I worked with this guy, I like gave him some advice. He followed some of it. He had $100 million exit, but with the 50% churn rate. And in the entire time I was working with them, I could never convince him all the money he was leaving on the table, but his exit could have been 500 million.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, like it was literally a churn and burn, and the person was fine with it.
And it's so sad because I think that in all of this, we're forgetting AI doesn't build companies. Processes and systems don't build companies. SOPs don't build companies. People build companies. Yeah. And it will always be that way. I doubt I will ever live to see the day when we see a company that is conceived and deployed entirely by AI. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you have to have people. You have to.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that line of thinking is so important, because if you look at whoever bought that, like, this person exited, so somebody had to buy it. And if they're cognizant of the situation, they got a bargain.
Right.
Right? Because they're like, this thing's losing 50% of every customer they bring in. If I fix that alone, right? This thing just prints money.
Yes.
And how do you do that? By caring about the people.
Yes.
Right? Putting the people back in there. And I'm sure the happiness index goes up as well. Right? Who wants to be anywhere where half the people who enter are leaving? Are you going to stay in the theater if, like, 15 minutes into the movie, half the audience walks out every single time you go to the show? Or a restaurant? Or
would you want to get on that cruise ship? I definitely wouldn't want to be on that flight. 15 minutes in, half the plane jumps out with their parachutes. Right. What do they know that I don't?
Exactly.
And we don't look at it that way. Many business owners don't consider that. They just don't, because they are way more outwardly directed, or they're vision focused, and they forget about their people. But being a leader is the privilege of serving the people who are helping you achieve your goals.
Right. That's maybe the most important interview question that candidates never ask.
Brilliant.
Right? What was your last year annual turnover rate, right? What'd you turn? 15%? 20%? Oh, 80%. Oh, this has been nice. Thank you so much. Because should you get on a ship that has 80% turnover?
Yeah.
Should you bet your career on a 20% gamble? Do
you want to work with an anesthesiologist? 20% of them wake up.
Right. They don't understand. And then you try and, lead the horse to water, right? Like,
yeah,
this 80% turnover doesn't scale.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Absolutely.
Right? Cost turnover $51 million a year. That can't be true. Or you just don't want to believe it. Right?
Yeah.
So do we need to fix the toxic culture? Yes. Yes, we do. Do we need leadership development and take the tyrants? away from the front line and teach people how to coach and do onboarding and.
Mm-hmm.
But Rob, we put snacks in the break room and there's free coffee. Oh, okay.
Better
And still have 80% turnover, right? Both those things are true at the same time. So tell me where the gap is.
Yeah.
Not money.
Yeah.
Right? So where's the buddy program? Where's the mentoring program?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And notice that these are all the soft things. These are all things that it's a lot hard. Like you can have a binary yes or no. Did I put in the buddy program?
Right.
But really, these are the soft things. And in my experience, it's the soft things that take the longest to work out, but have the biggest impact.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. The ROI is huge, but it takes a long time to get.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So fixes. What are some of the not so obvious or the no-brainers or the, where would you start to implement a buddy system? Where would you start to, like I'm thinking about the container versus the content, right? Like we already have an automation that we install every time of like, these are the touch points, right, mandatory minimum for a customer, but they're just empty containers. They need to be customized to the business, to the customer journey. So how do you bridge that gap? Figure out where those touch points are, and like internal or external.
I think I want to go back to what Zach said earlier about understanding their why. And let's talk about treating them as a human first on day one internally.
Okay.
One of the questions in the onboarding guide that I always ask is, help me understand why you come to work every day. What is it about, right? Really about. And if you create enough psychological safety, you hear about their family and how they're currently renting. They want to buy a house. They're trying to stand up their career after opting out of the workforce to raise their 2 children, right? They took a break. Now they're back, right? They'll share so much with you. And that's huge. That's huge. So let's start on day one, treat them like a human being and ask them why they come to work every day.
Right. So I can't see how that is any different client facing. And I think that's great. That's brilliant advice.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think about an episode of The Simpsons. So in an episode of The Simpsons, Homer quits. He comes back to work at the nuclear power plant, and Mr. Burns makes him put up a plaque that says, "Don't forget, you're here forever." And he puts up, he puts up pictures of Maggie, his baby, and he covers up the letters so it says, "Do it for her."
Beautiful.
And that's the kind of thing that you need to understand to be a good boss, the kind of boss that Rob, you were talking about. 4 years later, they text and say, "You were the best boss I ever had. Thank you so much." Right? You take the time to build that relationship and then to give them the opportunities that are going to move them closer to that goal.
Yes. Go to wakes, go to funerals, go to christenings, know their spouse's name, their kids' names, their pets' names. Right?
Right.
Yep.
Fantastic. Anything else while we start to wrap this up? Just final thoughts or ideas?
Think back to the beginning that mentoring is one of the things that can help you cure the brain drain in your organization. Apprenticeship is the other name for it. So what do you got, Zach?
Yeah. Well, first off, since you first mentioned it, that apprenticeship, I love that idea of apprenticeship. It's something that we really should bring back in our organizations. I think that's brilliant. George Washington had a favorite saying. People always laugh when I say it. It's many mickles make a muckle. They're like, what the hell is a muckle? Apparently, so I looked it up. Apparently, a muckle was a Scottish form of currency.
Wow.
And so was a mickle. So it's like many pennies make a dollar.
Right.
All of the small things add up to big things. If you focus on the big things, you'll be left with tripping over dollars to make dimes, quite frankly. But if you focus on those small interactions consistently, you'll look back to have built up a fortune and goodwill with your employees. Right. And this is way more than just a sporadic pizza party can do. This is things like, hey, I hear what you're saying, and I know that you really want to be here for your kids. So take the afternoon off. Go be with your family.
Fantastic.
You're already done with your work. Many mickles make a muckle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for this one today, guys. It was brilliant. And, thanks for being here. If you hung out with us, appreciate your time. And again, like your feedback, your consideration, your comments help other people as well. Have a great day.